What percentage of BC agri-food exports does China represent, and how much do you expect it to grow by?
Minister.
Thank you. Chair, in 2010, we exported $118 million of exports to China. In 2011, it was approximately $150 million of exports. This year, we're hoping for growth of between 5 and 10%. But it's outside of our control oftentimes. It's making sure we have willing sellers and willing buyers.
Member.
Thank you. Can the minister tell me how many beef slaughterhouses are in British Columbia that are able to have a federal inspection where the beef would be able to be sold to China?
Minister.
Chair, is this a question about estimates in 2012, 2013?
Member.
Is the minister being serious?
The answer is 0. I'm surprised the member doesn't know that, but that's fine.
Member.
Well, I thought perhaps the minister didn't know that, since the strategy around exporting BC beef to China was one of the main messages coming out of the Agra strategy. So my question is, with our BC beef having to, without any choice, cannot be processed in British Columbia, must go through Alberta or other avenues, how do we know that the ranchers that are selling their beef through that option, because there's no other option, are getting the best price for their product?
Minister.
Thank you, Chair. Right now, it's nice to say that the cattle producers of British Columbia are experiencing record prices for their product. And as we sell to China, it is an agreement between the federal government of Canada and the Chinese government for market access. And yes, the product is often processed in Alberta, but at the same time, we are having success getting market access between Canada and the federal or the Republic of China, I guess it is.
Member.
Okay, given that BC cattle go into Alberta feedlots and slaughter facilities, how can we be assured that it is in fact BC beef that's making its way to the China market?
Minister.
Thank you. A couple of things. The traceability levels that we have, which we're so proud of in British Columbia and in Canada, are one of the reasons we are actually able to sell our products with confidence both internally and externally from this province. But furthermore, though, too, the reality is the Chinese market isn't necessarily looking for BC beef, they're looking for Canadian beef. And our producers will get the benefit of this because we have quality product that is raised in British Columbia and finished often in Alberta.
Member. How much money is Alberta making off of our cattle?
It's not a stat that we track, and we were talking about how we'd get the information, and probably our best source would be through the BC Cattlemen's Association. However, one of the things I'd like to say is, you know, we have about 200,000 head of cattle in British Columbia right now, and it's fallen from about 400,000 at its prime, and it's fallen for reasons often outside of BC's control, things like disease and drought, and also closing of borders through agri-politics. However, I'm sure the member opposite is aware in southern United States, northern Mexico, the cattle industry is now experiencing difficulties of its own, which also in turn leads to some increased prices for commodity in British Columbia. We're looking forward to growing the number of head of cattle in British Columbia. We have about 6% of Canada's total herd in our province. As we can grow the herd to larger numbers, perhaps there will be opportunities for processing in British Columbia.
Member. Thank you. So is it my understanding that there's no work being done right now to ensure that we can slaughter our cattle here in British Columbia to send to the Chinese market?
Minister.
Thank you, Chair. All provinces are involved in a national meat hygiene standard. We are currently supporting one project in the Dawson Creek area, which is Lawrence Meats. Money for this project came from Ministry of Health. And we are looking at the opportunities to raise our meat processing up to federal standards, which would allow for exports.
Member.
And what's the timeline of that?
Minister.
Thank you, Chair. The pilot in Dawson Creek area is currently underway, and will be reviewed at the end of the year. But I also wish to remind members opposite and the viewing public that abattoirs are under the Ministry of Health, though obviously they're important to the agricultural producers and the ranching community in British Columbia.
Member.
Given that they are so important to the Ministry of Agriculture and the cattle industry and other livestock, how much work is the minister doing to correct the meat regulation debacle that is happening in British Columbia for the domestic market?
Minister.
Thank you, Chair. I'm sure the members opposite may know that on January 1st, 2014, the federal government will no longer be involved in meat inspection. The CFI is transitioning away from this. The Ministry of Agriculture is working with the Ministry of Health on the new meat inspection system, and we are currently helping coordinate consultations around the province to make sure that various communities and stakeholders have an opportunity to make their opinions known.
Member.
Well, this has been going on for quite some time, so I'd like to know the timeline of that.
Minister.
Thank you, Chair. I can't speak to the length of time that Ministry of Health has been working on this transition. However, I know the Ministry of Agriculture asked to become involved about 2 months ago, in maybe mid to late January, and so consultations are currently underway. We're hoping to end them in less than 6 months, and then the Ministry of Health will make recommendations as to where they see the meat inspection changes will happen.
Thank you. How many FTEs in the ministry are devoted to marketing and promotion of BC beef?
Right now in the ministry, we have 4 staff dedicated to promotion of BC agriculture product and production in the Ministry of Ag. However, I don't want to lead the member opposite on thinking that these are directed to one particular product area. We also have good partnerships with groups like the BC Cattlemen's. The Ranching Task Force has been successful in finding opportunities as well. And we're also looking forward to working with groups like the BCAC and some promotion of British Columbia product. As well, there are literally, hundreds of people in the Ministry of Agriculture who, when we need some of their expertise to assist with an opportunity that we find is important, that they can use their expertise, whether it be in the Chaco Lakes or the Kootenays, to help promote the products. But this, again, is not their primary responsibility.
Member.
Thank you. How much is spent on activities encouraging local consumption of BC beef compared to exporting to China for consumption?
Minister.
Thank you, Chair. When we look at the agri-food strategy, which will basically guide our actions going forward, we think there's a good balance between domestic and international markets there. We're definitely not trying to play favorites. We'd like to grow the markets in both places. We know there's value in British Columbians get access to the good quality, high value product that we produce in British Columbia, but we also know that the world will also benefit from it as well. The key thing we want to make sure is the farmers of British Columbia have an opportunity to sell their product and make sure that they have the best chance of making a living on the land.
Member.
I think that answer is kind of vague, so I'm going to ask my question again. What percentage of the budget is going towards the domestic market, and what percentage of the budget is going towards the export to China market?
Minister.
Thank you, Chair. Approximately $500,000 a year is spent on market promotion. It's split roughly 50-50 between domestic and international. However, on the international side, we don't break it down today with numbers based on country nor commodities. For international opportunities, we also rely on the expertise and resources of the Jobs, Tourism and Innovation Ministry. They have a larger budget and expertise in this area. And furthermore, we also like to work closely with our partners in agriculture in British Columbia, be they industry organizations or sector groups, to look for opportunities, and we help support them with some expertise and resources as times go through.
Recognizing the member from Saanich South.
Thank you. So it's my understanding that there was actually a cumulative impact study done in the 1980s by the Ministry of Agriculture, and those figures are available, but they're in 1980 dollar figures. So I think that if the minister was to look back in history, he would be able to find that information. But it really does beg the question of the whole idea of food security in British Columbia, and the question that was brought up around the cumulative impacts of development on agriculture and any other stakeholder groups on agriculture is really something that I'm very concerned about. And when I'm looking at the investment of promoting domestic agriculture and international agriculture being 50-50, it worries me. And the reason why it worries me is because I don't think that you want to have the same focus on the international market as you do on the domestic market for the reasons that the minister brought up himself. Those being the vulnerabilities of the international market. We saw what happened with the BC beef industry on the international market when BSE came in. We see that there's vulnerabilities there. The problems that are happening down south are something that they're more vulnerable because they're depending on an international market and an export market. I am in full agreement that we need to have an export market, but it's, and I've stated this for the record many, many times, if you don't focus on the domestic market and building that and making that stable, it's like building a fancy house without a foundation. You can always fall back on the domestic market. We have 4 million people in British Columbia. They eat sometimes 3 times a day. If that's not a market that we want to build around, I'm not sure what other focus we could have if we're building a strong agriculture sector.